Hi, Endeavour here. For the record, I'm totally against the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Now that I've moved back to Canada, now that I'm worried about myself, now that I'm trying to cover my tracks. Like, this deceit is so repulsive to me because it's totally absent in any kind of humility. It's just like, I'll just throw them off the tracks like this. Throw them off your path. Well, I don't think you will, mate. I don't think you will. Because, well, I've looked deeper into your content, which is incredibly boring, your content. You're a deeply mediocre analyst that I just think has attached himself to, like, you know, other people, and you try to replicate it in a particularly sort of charmless and inane fashion. But, you know, fair play. Because of the parasocial relationships, you being like the fat little weeble of the north, his little, milk monitor, that presumably is what has resulted in 28,000 views, 29,000 viewers on YouTube. Although, perhaps a lot of them are Russian bots. And with the information that's come to light, I'm starting to suspect that might be the case. Because previously, I'd kind of floated the idea, is this guy sort of somehow, has he been in Russia and is he somehow got some degree of connection with, I don't know, degree of connection, media observation units, quote unquote nationalist groups, big quotes, whilst there, and he's, you know, on some level he's a sort of point man, a sort of pivot, and he connects people. I speculated about this and I thought, well, it is a possibility, but then I listened to him and I thought, this guy's a fucking muppet, which he is. That's unequivocal. But that doesn't preclude that possibility arising. And now, seeing the subsequent material, I'm starting to think, no, I actually genuinely think this is quite credible. I don't know, I think it's quite credible. And I mean, I think a guy like that would be brought into that kind of scene. He's a useful idiot and he's an eager beaver type, I suspect.
Hi guys. Yeah, let me tell you, I got lots of friends in the Western dissident scene. Yeah, and they're totally against what there's going on in the West. I got 25,000, 26,000. Oh, you probably at that point. I've got 8,000 viewers.
Suddenly you got 29,000 viewers, it would seem. Well, okay, maybe. Point being is he's kind of eager beavered around some sort of scene, and these kind of scenes, these kind of like quote unquote nationalist groups, just probably went for a drink or something, I don't know. But they're connected with the FSB. There's always a fucking handler somewhere in the background, so maybe, well, this guy's quite useful. He knows a lot of Western dissidents, and as we know from their words, Russia fund Western dissidents, you know, for the purposes of demoralization and to embed key narratives in Western, you know, discourse, which furthers their interests. It's specifically around dividing, you know, the America and England, or America and Europe, you know, keeping that split and instilling isolationism. I mean, you know, I've talked about this at length, so we can move straight on, but clearly, seems to me, it is not really up for debate. The dissident right, in total, in sum, which actually doesn't mean like everyone necessarily is like, you know, tasked or whatever, but as a group is a Russian asset. And I'm starting to suspect that this guy is some sort of, you know, fixer potentially in doing that. And he spends a lot of time, he drifts around the place, you know, he visits people, he goes and stays with people. I mean, you know, again, this is the only information I can glean. But when I look at your content, Endeavour, you see, then I just see what you're doing. And actually in this video, I'm just going to show a video that he made on the 27th he published of April. So this is 3 weeks after the Wag Dog stream, which I'll probably publish before then. So just to give you some context, I'll probably just stick some images on the screen here, so you can see what was going on in Ukraine around this time. And I mean, this was April the 27th, so, you know, everything that's gone on in the Wag the Dog stream, which I've alluded to previously, and I actually recorded that before seeing this secondary video. So I think I was pretty sort of fair in pretty sort of like erring on the side of probably not, because this information hadn't been availed to me at that point. Now I'm seeing it in a much more cynical mindset that it is quite possible that this guy's connected, and therefore this kind of information tactic was pushed. And when you look at Morgoth's content and you look at this guy, they're great pals, these two. They go and they go stay at each other's houses. Well, he stays at Morgoth. They go stay at each other's. They're good friends. And so when you start to look at Morgoth's content, is this guy tipping him the wink? Is this saying, look, this is what the Russians want? If you do this, you know, I've passed you information on, and if you fulfill these, you know, criterias, then, you know, there's money in it. Again, this is supposition, and I don't know, but it's quite conceivable when you look at the content of this video that I'll play it in full. What I'll do is I'll write out my own little essay on this, because I'll do what he's fucking done. I'll write the words out, because this is the key thing, right? This guy wrote this as an essay, and when you go through it, it is so clear what he's doing. It is so unequivocal what this man is doing. He is coattailing anti-Ukraine sentiment into his audience, which is the Western Dissident Right audience, and he's ringing all the right bells to do that. It's very, very cynical. It is NLP. It is absolutely leading. It's textbook. So here's the thing. If you want to go on a stream and like hold court on a stream and say one or two things, and you think, oh, well, maybe that's an ill-advisable thing. Well, okay. But no, this guy's sat there and he's read it and he's spent a lot of time on it and he's edited it. So there is clear intent, clear anti-Ukraine intent in this. There's absolutely, it's not up for debate.
But for the record, he's totally against the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
And I actually asked him. I gave him a chance to respond to this. And I'll stick it on the screen. And he blocked me within 5 minutes. And you tell me, is that question, I'm putting a direct question to him. I think it's fair. And it's just saying, look, have you ever done this? I'm giving him a chance to get up ahead of this before publishing this video. And look what he's done. Straight to block. These people, they're so transparent. So transparent. And in doing this, you just underline what you are. And that's what I believe I allude to in this. This is what you are, mate. And all you're doing is underlining that. Same with all these people. You never get a response. This is Confederation of Grift Company policy, clearly. They unexist you, and they think, well, this guy, they will certainly know what I'm doing with my channel. I mean, they had my channel fucking torpedoed, so they would have fucking celebrated that, there's no question. Then, you know, now I'm on these peripheries, they look at it and go, this guy's a fucking mug, he's got 60, 70 views on his videos, doesn't matter. So we don't respond to him, because in responding to him, you shine a light there and you bring other eyes there. Well, fair enough. What I'm doing is I'm not looking for views. I'm just trying to compile a case study of active measures. This is what this channel is. Like, this is just cataloguing what these people have fucking done.
For the record.
Which is why I fucking want it on the record. And this guy, as I say, there's no response. So he's avoiding it. He's avoiding the question like he's avoided all my other previous questions, which preceded my video on him. I give these people a chance. I give them a right to reply. Every fucking time. Frody the Toady, Angelo Plume, all of them. So, you know, he's avoided that question, because if you come back and say, do you know what? Yeah, I was in Russia at the time and I was trying to fit in. Because there is, I'm sorry, there's simply no question that what he's done in this video is a very deceptive, very cynical bit of attempted persuasion to benefit Russia. There's no question in that. If you can fucking tell me, if you can fucking tell with your own ears, if you want, just go and listen to it individually and don't listen to my little precis of it. And you want to tell me that this isn't what it is, with his clever little NLP rhythms dropping in Ukraine after each key point. BLM, COVID, what was it? The Greta Thunberg, stand with Ukraine. It's so cynical. And it's actually quite clumsy. So clearly you had an anti-Ukrainian intent. I believe you've still got that. And you're just trying to hide it Now that you're back in the West and you're concerned for yourself, because as I said previously, with all these people, all roads lead to themselves. And this guy, now he's back in.
Hey, for the record,
you are full of shit. You have done active measures just in this alone. And I believe that you've hooked up other people within the Dissident Right scene, you know, for these purposes. So when we look at Morgoth's content, as I have done in depth, I think there's someone in the fucking background. And I think that might be you. And it might be you that's rung that fucking bell. And has said, look, here's like half a dozen figures. These are in my orbit. You know, keep an eye on their content. Because the FSB, whomever it will be, would just be saying, yeah, well, this is what we want. I mean, it's not rocket science. This guy is anti-Ukraine. Clearly. He has always been anti-Ukraine, it would seem. He doesn't deign to respond when you ask a perfectly reasonable, direct question and say, look, mate, you should really respond to this. No response, of course. He's off tweeting merrily elsewhere. It's clear what you are, mate. It's clear what you are. And if I were you, I'd fuck off back to Russia. That's just my advice. It's my advice for all these fucking pricks. But, you know, do what you want. Do what you want, really. But I'm just going to highlight it. So I'll roll the rest of the video. You know, you can make of it what you will.
Hello, Endeavour here. I recently read the essay The Power of the Powerless by Václav Havel.
Okay, so he begins this article with what you could call, this is him basically borrowing authority. So he talks about Václav Havel's book, The Power of the Powerless. I mean, this is a way to basically get dissident credibility by proxy. It's designed to lower the reader's guard and basically tell you, he's doing some research on things. But all this does is this is a delivery device for what's going to come next. And it's basically him saying, you know, I'm not pushing an agenda here. You know, I'm just doing some, you know, dissident theory. It is basically a credibility loan. Just a way, as I say, to drape himself in moral authority.
In 1978, he was a political dissident in communist Czechoslovakia who would go on to become the first president of Czechoslovakia, and later the Czech Republic following the fall of communism in 1989. The essay is about what can be done by an ordinary citizen in resistance to what Havel called a post-totalitarian system. He described Czechoslovakia in the 1970s as post-totalitarian because it was no longer a classical dictatorship like the Stalinist Soviet Union, where dissenters were regularly thrown into a gulag or put up against a wall and shot. Instead, it relied on a network of institutions loyal to the communist ideology of the regime, creating an atmosphere of fear, repression, and self-censorship which traps the individual inside the system. Havel famously uses the example of a greengrocer who puts up a sign in his store window which reads, "Workers of the world unite," the rallying cry written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels at the end of the Communist Manifesto. The act of placing the sign in his window is not a vow of genuine belief in communism on the part of the greengrocer, but a display of his submission to the regime. No one who walks by will notice the "Workers of the World Unite" sign. It's practically elevator music to anyone living in Czechoslovakia. But by not displaying the sign, he might out himself as a troublemaker, as someone who is not compliant with the system, thus bringing the pressure of the regime down upon him.
See, what's hilarious, and I've only just realised this on listening back, everything he's critiquing here, he's now doing, because he's moved back to Canada.
And now, for a record, I'm totally against the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Which of course he isn't, because he's never talked about any of the war crimes and he's never talked about any of the terrible things that Russia is doing to the Ukrainian people in 4 years. And he's done propaganda for Russia in this and in multiple other cases, such as Wag the Dog. He's best pals with Morgoth. All this, he's in this little unit. But here he is, you know, yielding in his frame to the evil globalist agenda. So this guy is so weak. He's so spineless. He's such a cuck by his own admission. So anyway, a bit of an interjection there, but it needs to be said. What a cuck.
He displays the sign as his way of saying he is compliant, and in doing so, he's living within the lie of the communist system. He might not actually believe in the principles found in the Communist Manifesto, but he will pay lip service to them because the system based on them has power over him. The sign signals to others that they must do the same in order to not out themselves as wrong thinkers. Someone who likewise doesn't actually care too much about the workers of the world uniting might decide to display the sign, lest the green grocer, who gives the outward appearance of supporting the system, but inwardly might not, would identify this other citizen as a dissident. Havel stated that the power of the powerless lies in their ability to live within the truth, to not go along with the lies which the system uses to keep the population under control. He wrote that power is not something that can be done away with. It's relational and ultimately relies on the population's willingness to submit to it. By taking down the sign which reads "Workers of the World Unite," the green grocer will have begun to live in the truth. He is no longer displaying his submission to the regime. In his mind, it no longer has the same amount of power over him. Others might notice that he has taken down the sign and either take it down if they are displaying it themselves or be more skeptical whenever they see it. They too will have started to live in the truth. Havel writes that from this point, communities can be formed which live in the truth. This is the process through which the illusion which the post-totalitarian system uses to control the population begins to wane.
So what you're going to get now for the next 2 minutes is basically priming. This is what you call a yes ladder, where he basically sets the stage, he embeds the narratives. And it's everything that his audience disdain, it's everything that no one wants to associate with in the dissident right. And this is building up to then dropping in the defense of Ukraine. So, I mean, I'll put some text on the screen and you can listen along.
The resemblance between the post-totalitarian system Havel describes and the system which exists in the West today surely is uncanny. In the same way that the sign which read "Workers of the World Unite" was a symbol of compliance to the communist system in Czechoslovakia, today the rainbow flag or the medical face mask serve as symbols of compliance to the system of globalism. Take the mask, for example. A guy could be wearing it not because he actually believes that a deadly pandemic is going on and that it will protect him, but because he sees some woman wearing it and he thinks that she will scold him for not doing so. Simultaneously, that very person who he wears the mask to avoid a confrontation with could be only wearing it because she is afraid that he will scold her for not wearing it. So it gets two people who have not exactly bought into the dogma to go along with the lie in fear of being outed as a wrong thinker. By taking off the mask, the man begins to live in the truth. And by doing so, the woman might see that he has taken off the mask and do the same. Now they have a group of people who are living in the truth which can grow from there. It's certainly applicable to the present day, and again, I'm far from the first person to point this out. But what I want to look at here is not the similarities between the communist system Havel wrote about and the present day, but what I believe to be a fundamental difference between the two. And I believe that this can be found in the slogan, "Workers of the World Unite" itself. It's the rallying cry for a worldwide revolution to bring about a classless workers' utopia, completing Marx's historical dialectic. The slogan dates back to the 19th century. Now, let's contrast that with analogous slogans employed in the West today. Diversity is our strength, Black Lives Matter, Stay Home, Save Lives, Our Democracy, Build Back Better, Stand with Ukraine. They are all similar to the "Workers of the World Unite" slogan from the Communist Manifesto in that they are these Orwellian pledges of submission to a totalitarian system.
So here you can see quite clearly he has designed a yes ladder to make people associate supporting the nation, which at this point, just reeling from the Bucha massacre, has had at this point where we two and a bit months of daily war crimes against it. He's never mentioned a war crime in 4 years.
He's totally against the Russian invasion of Ukraine, guys. Now I've moved back to Canada. Now I want to hide what I've done.
So he's labeling this, supporting the nation of Ukraine, along with all the things his audience will hate. He's yes-landed it. He's brought you to that point, and he's saying that this is a submission to a totalitarian Orwellian regime.
Let's contrast that with analogous slogans employed in the West today. Diversity is our strength, Black Lives Matter, Stay Home, Save Lives, Our Democracy, Build Back Better, Stand with Ukraine. They are all similar to the "Workers of the World Unite" slogan from the Communist Manifesto in that they are these Orwellian pledges of submission to a totalitarian system.
Again, this is 3 weeks since he's done the Wag the Dog stream with Morgoth, where he, essentially embedded a sort of further embedded, which Morgoth has done for months subsequent to that and prior to that. I think the two of these are in cahoots. I think they're funded. I'll continue.
But the fundamental difference is that rather than prophesizing the completion of a grand historical civilizational process like is implied by the slogan, "Workers of the World Unite," these slogans, which are used today in the form of Twitter hashtags, are only applicable to events of a 2 or 3 month window, then discarded and replaced with a new slogan of compliance to the globalist system. I believe that what separates the communist tyranny Havel was writing about in the 1970s and the globalist tyranny which rules the Western world today is that the former was a modernist tyranny and the latter is a postmodernist tyranny. I recently reread the book The Postmodern Condition by Jean-Francois Lyotard. In the book, Lyotard defines postmodernism as the loss of the belief in grand historical meta-narratives. Back in 2020, I made a video about this book and how postmodernity helps explain the death of the historical epic film genre.
Okay, so I've just done a quick edit point here because he basically talks about postmodernity and meta-narratives for about 3 minutes. And basically this is just to prime you what comes next. And he basically says, oh, Christianity was a meta-narrative and this was a meta-narrative. But now today we're doing these like 2 to 3 month narratives. So I've edited out approximately 2.5 minutes of dialogue, just to be clear.
Today, in postmodernity, we no longer believe in such grand historical narratives. We no longer believe in things like God, the nation, the West, the proletariat, or the bourgeoisie. So how does the current system of globalist tyranny legitimize itself, since power is legitimized through narratives? It seems to me that rather than one overarching societal narrative through which people understand the world, the West is directed by a series of mini-narratives which change from one month to the next on the whims of political power. Let's just look at how radically the various narratives have changed over the last 2 years. At the beginning of 2020, you were supposed to believe that there was this deadly pandemic going around and that it's your civic duty to stay in your home watching Netflix 24/7 and to wear a mask everywhere. In the middle of 2020, you were supposed to believe that the Western world, the United States in particular, was an oppressive white supremacist society, and that it was your moral imperative to tear everything perceived to be white down, especially the institution of law enforcement. Canada went through something similar in summer 2021 with the mass graves hoax. In late 2020 and early 2021, in the United States, you were supposed to believe that America was this great democracy whose democratic ideals were under attack by Donald Trump and his right-wing extremist followers. The institution of the police, who were only months ago condemned as defenders of white supremacy, after January 6, 2021, were hailed as these brave defenders of democracy. In Canada, you were supposed to believe the same thing about the truckers' protests in early 2022. Then, for the rest of 2021, the pandemic narrative was brought back into the forefront, and you were supposed to believe that it was now your civic duty to take a certain medication, all in the name of saving lives. Anyone who didn't take this medication was to be cast out of society. They weren't to be allowed to have a job or go to a restaurant or a retail store or even receive medical attention if needed. They were the moral outgroup for whom no sympathy or mercy was to be shown. Now in 2022, you're supposed to believe that Russia is a threat to democracy and that paying ridiculously high food and gas prices caused by the policies of Western governments is your way of supporting Ukraine.
I really don't think I need to expand on this. I mean, you can just listen to it. This is absolutely NLP. There's no question. And he's written this out. He's planned this. He's drafted it. He's gone away. He's edited it. There's a few times here he drops in. You can tell he's done some audio edits and stuff like this. Not necessary to this piece specifically, to be clear. But, you know, throughout this piece, he's produced this with a view to embedding negative responses in his listenership to the support of Ukraine. There's absolutely no debate to be had, and I mean, if anyone can listen back to this and tell me otherwise, just by all means knock yourself out. But you know, it won't work because this is just clear, blatant NLP. So, like pretty much everyone else in the Dissident Right, like his pal Morgoth, they both do the fake neutral thing. Well, now, I mean, now this guy's totally against it, but, you know, This is all like, I'm just, oh, and I'm not really interested. I'm not pro-Russian. Meanwhile, just embedding all this like NLP. Just like Morgoth did his NLP drops about the whole cold winter and all the rest of it. It's the same techniques. I'm noticing a pattern, which is why I'm starting to speculate, regarding, potential for some sort of connect there. That's all it is. It's just speculation. I can't know. But when you notice these patterns, I think these things are fair to speculate over. And really, just to highlight the NLP that he's actually doing here, I mean, this is what you would call a resentment transfer. You don't need to make it. You're already saying that your way of feeling all this, economic pain. So this is happening now. I mean, and this is purely, he's tying that into the defense of Ukraine. So everyone who's listening to that is feeling some degree of economic pain. And, the war in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine did cause inflation in the West. There's no argument to that. But you should just cuck. You should just let them have it because now inflation's gone up. And this is your way of showing solidarity to Ukraine. I mean, again, I don't feel I need to expand on this because it's so transparent. It's embedded. It's by association. You don't even need to justify it. It's just like, yes, wait a minute, I am suffering because of Ukraine. See, again, this is all in the wake of war crimes, which he will never mention in 4 years, like the rest of them. It really is disgusting stuff. And for him to come out at the end and try and pretend that
I'm totally against it.
You're a fucking liar, mate, and we can all see that. And once again, I gave him the opportunity. I gave him a right to respond. I said to him, I'll put it on the screen. Do you look back at some of your old content and see that quite possibly you might have been embedding pro-Russian narratives? And what did he do? He fucking blocked me. He blocked me for this. So I gave him the opportunity. If he had replied to that and said, do you know what? Yeah, I got caught up in it and I was being a bit of an inverse NPC and I was affected by the propaganda at the time and now I've gone away and reflected it. And well, maybe you need to show contrition. You need to show humility. He just fucking blocks it. So in that, he's revealed everything again. It's like with Morgoth, the only fucking way out for Morgoth, as far as I'm concerned, is for him to come clean and to admit what he's been doing, which is embedding anti-Ukrainian sentiment from a fake neutral stance. If he admits that, fair enough, mate. That is your path to contrition, and it involves humility. And I think you should fucking blow the whistle on a lot of other shit that's gone in DR regarding Russian funding as well. That's just my personal feeling on all these people, because I think they are guilty. But in this instance here, I gave this guy an opportunity. Get up ahead of this. What do you think? Have you done this? On reflection, have you done this? Blocked. So again, you can see them for what they are.
Now in 2022, you're supposed to believe that Russia is a threat to democracy and that paying ridiculously high food and gas prices caused by the policies of Western governments is your way of supporting Ukraine. And you're supposed to cheer along as Western governments antagonize a nuclear power.
So here you go. You've got a call to cuckoldry. This is so wretched. These people are so wretched. Morgoth does this all the time. They all fucking do this. Oh no, poking the bear, like, oh no, we're going to pay the consequences, we're going to get bombed, like, oh no. Just cuck to this fucking invader that's going around rounding people up, dragging them out of their fucking basements where they're hiding from the fucking bombs. Pull them out, take them to industrial estates, torture them, beat them, then put them in ditches and shoot them in the back head. Just fucking cuck to them. Oh no, it's a nuclear state. What are we doing? We must be mad. Oh, you're paying exorbitant food and gas prices. Oh my God. Just cuck. Like, this guy is a cuck. And most people in the Dissident Right are cucks. So it makes sense on some level to use this narrative, but it is what it is.
You're supposed to cheer along as Western governments antagonize a nuclear power. If you're a boomer, you're supposed to see the Russia-Ukraine conflict as analogous to World War II, or rather Hollywood movies made about World War II. And if you're a millennial, you're supposed to see the conflict as analogous to Star Wars or Harry Potter.
This is just total straw manning. He does this in the Wag the Dog stream, and he basically says, oh yeah, people on the internet, they're all just saying this is all like Voldemort and Putin's Voldemort. Look, if people are saying that on Facebook, you can just ignore it because it's just naff, it's bullshit. But what these people do is they'll take some fringe, absolute minor thing and they'll go, oh my God, guys, this is the narrative now. Because it's there to cheapen anyone who is showing genuine solidarity with Ukraine, with Russia's enemy. It's quite simple. So it's just, the whole tone of this is just to make it quote unquote cringe to be seen as supporting Ukraine. And it's been very effective in the dissident right because they are inverse NPCs for the most part. So this is nudge unit shit. They know the demographic and they just press the buttons. It's very simple stuff. I mean, you know, it's such straw manning, it's such intellectual dishonesty, but, you know, what do you expect from these people?
The same people who months ago were on a moral crusade to save lives are now the loudest advocates of policies which risk causing a nuclear conflict. And they always give you someone that you're supposed to hate. One day you're supposed to hate the police and the racists. The next day you're supposed to hate the conspiracy theorists and the anti-medicationers. Today they want you to hate the Russians. Tomorrow they're going to want you to hate the climate change deniers.
You're supposed to hate the Russians now. Next, you'll be... And notice that he edited this point in. You can tell by the audio change. So he'd obviously listened back and he thought, no, this isn't enough. I need another. I need a little chaser here at the end of it. So he added in, you know, the extra stuff about the nuclear power. It's a call to cuckoldry. It's the most repulsive, low-energy, fear-based response to evil. Oh, no. Oh, don't do anything. Oh, look the other way. Fucking disgusting. Disgusting.
Today, people are bombarded with information 24/7 via their screens. This constant barrage of information overloads their ability to process any of it. People today do not have the mental capacity to remember what they believed 3 months ago because in that space of time, they are overwhelmed by one narrative after another to the point where something that only happened a couple months ago, which in another era would be seen as very recent, is perceived as ancient history. Their brain needs to clear its memory space every couple of months to make room for the new information they need to consume. Another great example of this is with the certain medication. People were initially told in early 2021 that this medication was going to end the pandemic. 2 shots and then that's it. Then a few months later they were telling us, well, now you actually need to get a 3rd shot. And then they said you'll need to get a 4th shot. And then they said you'll probably need one every few months. People had completely forgotten the original promise because the media information narrative machine had flooded their minds so much over that time that it was just lost in a big sea of information. And in spring 2022, when the negative side effects of this medication are being revealed, the public is now captivated by new narratives about the conflict in Ukraine, and they're no longer interested in this news. There were even a lot of people on the dissident right swept up in this. They proclaimed that the pandemic was over and done with when the news shifted away, seemingly forgetting all the horrible things which were done over the last 2 years and the collateral damage which will be with us for years to come. This really is how this postmodern tyrannical system is able to get away with the most blatant of lies. The narratives in the public consciousness move so quickly that any inconvenient contradictions which emerge will be lost in the news cycle in a matter of days. So in that respect, the truth simply doesn't matter anymore.
So here he's just doing the frame that to be invested, to care, to give a shit about what's going on in occupied Ukraine is to be a dupe. And you're missing it. You're missing the distraction. I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, they've all done this, but you know, it is repulsive when you look at the actual conditions, especially during this time. He's never mentioned Bucha in 4 years. He's totally
against it, though. Yeah.
He's totally during this.
Totally against it.
Moving on from that, he says that the truth doesn't matter anymore. So okay, so what is the truth here? Because if you're just saying, oh well, this is all, well, it's all lies if it's not the truth. So what is the truth pertaining to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which now you're claiming to have always been against, or to be totally against? So this is kind of instilling nihilism. It's just like, it's a bit like those hardcore conspiracy theorists that nothing's real. You know, just don't pay any attention. Don't access data from the world around you. Because it's all meta-narratives, and if you do that, you're a dupe. You know, this really is to instill stasis, nihilism, fear, cuckoldry, self-interest. Oh no, you're paying exorbitant gas prices, and is this your way of standing with Ukraine? It's all so loaded. It's all so plain sight, but yeah, we'll continue.
You'd think that today, in an era when the public has an unprecedented access to information, it would be more difficult for a regime to get away with such obvious lies. But that has not been the case, because the endless bombardment of false information is able to drown out the truth. Going back to Václav Havel's essay, The Power of the Powerless, the regime which he was opposing in the 1970s in the old Eastern Bloc was a modernist tyranny. The process of passive resistance which he described was to chip away at the grand meta-narrative that the communist system was based on. Again, I do think that many of the tactics which he recommended are useful today, but the problem is that the system today is no longer based on one overarching historical meta-narrative, but many different mini-narratives which fluctuate in their preeminence in the public consciousness. When one of their mini-narratives begins to fall apart, they can just take it out of focus and replace it with another mini-narrative, and the public seems to fall in line again every time. This happened with the pandemic. Once enough discontent was built up in a sizable proportion of the population, they just dropped that narrative and replaced it with the narrative surrounding the Ukraine conflict.
So again, this is so transparent. It's like, he's basically saying that anyone caring for Ukraine is just a fool and is being tricked into stopping caring about COVID. Like, why are these two things mutually exclusive? But of course, for them, this is just an NLP labeling device. You have to realize that. You have to see things as they are, right? That this just kind of, it's the current thing. Stop caring. It's all these things you hate. It's just the next thing that you hate from all this list, which I've primed you for 2 or 3 times with yes ladders. But like, there's never, ever any agency. There's never any reason. Like, Russia's gone in. Like, no, Russia invaded Ukraine. It's just their narrative for the Ukraine conflict. Again, the language is key. The Ukraine conflict. This is the 27th of April. What is that? I don't know, 7 weeks? Something like that since the invasion? 8, 9 weeks, whatever it is. It's an invasion. It's a hard invasion with tanks, with war crimes, with cluster bombs, with residential zones, all the rest of it. But it's just a conflict, and the conflict's, it's no agency to a conflict. It's just, it's just there. It's so cynical. It's so cynical. But anyway, we'll continue.
And it seems like they've been able to take the public for a ride yet again and bury the animosity which they had accumulated. Now, I don't think it's accurate to say that people don't believe in any kind of meta-narratives today. For example, the narratives of black liberation, decolonization, or certain events during World War II do form what I would call the anti-white meta-narrative. This is a long historical narrative which determines how we understand the issue of race today. Similar narratives exist for gender and sexuality as well. These do resemble meta-narratives. They've been built up since the end of the Second World War, before postmodernity had fully taken effect. What I think has happened over the last few years is that these bigger narratives have been integrated into a more recent system of rapid narrative change. They're always active to some degree. The ideology remains in place, and so do the policies. But the narratives fluctuate in their predominance in the public's mind. For example, the anti-white narrative was first and foremost in 2016 before the Trump election, summer 2020, and during major events like the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. But then they take a backseat temporarily when there's a drive to get everyone to take a medication, or when they want to fearmonger about Russia or the dangers posed by climate change. This process of control through rapid narrative change is reflected by the behavior of normies on social media, or the NPCs as they're now known. There's the new meme, I support the current thing. I think this perfectly captures the essence of postmodern tyranny. The NPC picks up signals from the media what they're supposed to believe today, and on a dime, they adopt their new beliefs and change their profile picture, signaling that they're a good compliant sheep. And consider the symbolism of this. A profile picture is someone's avatar in the digital space which they're increasingly spending their lives. They add an overlay to the avatar, signaling that supporting the current thing is temporarily an integral part of their identity. And the purpose that was served by slogans like "Workers of the world unite in the 20th century" is now served by Twitter hashtags. They are a rallying cry in support of the current thing, which will soon be replaced by a new current thing. The strength of this postmodern system of tyranny is that it's able to keep the public in a constant state of fear and hysteria. It allows the elites to make enormous advances in a short period of time to implement agendas which only a few years earlier would have been unthinkable. Just imagine if you had told people in 2019 that in the near future they will have to show a QR code to go to a shopping mall. No one would have accepted that, but yet 3 years later, here we are. It's a major change from the method of subversion which took place in the decades following World War II. In those years, those who were hostile to the West slowly took over the culture by incrementally changing the psychology of the public, through gradually changing the messages they were receiving through media and education. In military terms, those who wished to destroy our civilization in the post-war era waged a cultural war of attrition, while today those in power are launching a blitzkrieg. Another strength of postmodern tyranny is its unparalleled ability to deceive the public. It's extremely difficult to even understand this system because it's not clear what it is exactly. In the 20th century, there were several different kinds of regimes, such as liberal, communist, fascist. Back then, it was at least clear what liberalism, communism, and fascism were. You could say you support one of them or oppose the others, but at least it was understood what those terms meant. Going back to Havel's essay, in the Eastern Bloc, people understood that the system was communist and that dissidents were opposed to communism. And I know some Marxist idiot on the internet will say, well, Stalinism wasn't real communism, Trotskyism is real communism. But let's cut that crap. We know what communism was. The Eastern Bloc was communist. We understand that. But that's something we can't even manage today. On paper, Western countries are liberal democracies. The United States is technically under the same constitution that it was in the 18th century. But in reality, it's undergone a greater transition as a society in the last 2 or 3 decades than Russia went through during the Bolshevik Revolution. I have many criticisms of liberalism, which I've spoken about at length on my channel, but I've come to the realization that many of these criticisms are moot. The system is no longer liberal democracy. It's just continuing to wear the former liberal democratic system as a skin. It's something else. If I had to put a label on it, I'd call it technocratic intersectional anarcho-tyranny. If I had to put a label on it, I'd call it technocratic intersectional anarcho-tyranny. Technocratic intersectional anarcho-tyranny. But even if you asked 5 different people on the dissident right to describe the system, they'd describe it differently. And for the general public, they're still under the illusion that the system is liberal democracy. Now, here's what I think is the disadvantage of this postmodern tyranny. From the perspective of the globalist elites who are running it, that is. While its ability to make enormous advances in such a short period of time and deceive the public into going along with it is unprecedented, I have my doubts about the long-term sustainability of this system of rule. Because the absence of a grand overarching meta-narrative which legitimizes the system forces it to constantly come up with new mini-narratives to keep the charade going. To do that, they need one crisis after another with the hysteria permanently turned up to 11. It kind of reminds me of that scene in Wallace and Gromit when Gromit is riding a toy train, but the track is incomplete, so he needs to pick up a box of track pieces and rapidly build the track in front of a moving train. The system allows them to move their train full steam ahead without even having finished the tracks they're riding on yet, but eventually the train is going to crash. Now, it does appear that they have a destination in mind, that being Agenda 2030 and the so-called Sustainable Development Goals. I imagine that they'll try to turn the fight against climate change and sustainable development into a new foundational meta-narrative for the new globalist world. And that this postmodern blitzkrieg of one phony manufactured crisis after another is just meant to get us to 2030. In theory, that would make their new system post-2030 more sustainable. But I have my doubts that they'll be able to do that because they aren't being honest about their intentions. I have my doubts that they'll be able to do that because they aren't being honest about their intentions. They need these fake crises to deceive the public in order to get them from one phase to the next. They're trying to implement Agenda 2030 by sneaking it in through the back door. If they were confident that they could create a new meta-narrative through which people would understand the world, why can't they just come out and be honest about what they're trying to implement, if the goal is to get people to sincerely believe in it? Also, why the year 2030? I know that this is the year which the UN set as the target for achieving the so-called Sustainable Development Goals, but why does it have to be 2030? Does it really need to be this rapid? They want to radically transform life on our planet, but they've given themselves such a short timeline to do so. Furthermore, even if they are able to implement this, I still think they'll need to keep this postmodern roller coaster ride going in perpetuity, because they've been pushing fear over climate change for decades, but it's never caught on. So they're going to need to keep the public in a constant state of hysteria beyond 2030. And just like with the pandemic, when it becomes clear that the threat isn't what they're saying it is, the science on climate change is going to have to be changed constantly in order to sustain the illusion. I don't think they'll be able to say, this is the science and that's final. They'll have to constantly explain away more and more contradictions. This is why I'm not so sure this system will last forever, but the damage it will cause is concerning to say the least. I think the real red pill in present-day clown world isn't realizing that one of their countless mini-narratives is false, but realizing that all these narratives are a charade being put on by a hostile globalist elite. That in the short term, we need to disconnect from their system and not buy into their clown show, and that in the long term, we need to clear them out.
So there you go. He kind of blathers on towards the end about climate change and a couple of other things. And I mean, the reason why I kept that bit in is he still refers to all these fake manufactured crises. Now, this is what he's labelled the defence of Ukraine and people standing in solidarity with Ukraine. From the off, and he said that this is your suffering. I mean, it's all in the video, so not just to repeat what we've already seen at this point, but, just to highlight what he's done there is he's placed the defence of Ukraine in a package. He's bundled it together with everything the dissident right disdain. Over and over again, he's labelled it. He's made yes ladders explicitly. There's no question. And as I've said, this is an edited, curated piece. He's done this with intent. That really is not open for debate. And now he's trying to lie.
I'm totally against it.
Which the irony is, because he's such a cuck, he is now performing the greengrocer in Václav Havel's analogy. He's doing just that. Now he's returned to Canada and now he's worried for himself. So he's putting the sign in the window himself. So by his own frame, everything this man says, there's no strength to this man. Because listen, if you want to be pro-Russian, be pro-Russian. That is ultimately your choice. But don't fucking lie about it, and don't do this fake neutral shit. And then don't try and fucking cover your tracks like this. Because, as I said many times with Morgoth, all you do is you show your guilt.
I'm totally against it.
I never expressed an opinion about war. These are fucking low quality people. Exceptionally low quality people, and it should go on the record. Anyway, so there you go. I think that's pretty much everything in this video. I don't really think there's much left to say, in all honesty. I mean, there is another video which I'm yet to finish, which will probably be up. I mean, maybe I'll space it out a day or two, which is about their Wag the Dog stream. Fucking Twinkie and Tweedledum and Tweedledee. That's that they recorded 3 weeks prior to this. And again, I mean, I've already alluded to it. This is when, literally when the Butcher News story was right at the peak of the storm, April the 3rd, they went out and they did this information fog. And I mean, I've already recorded that, so that's without the information that I, got from looking at this video and analysing this video. So the recording I've made of that is probably kinder, if you want to put it in these terms. Now I am genuinely suspicious. I mean, as I say, I don't think he's a fucking FSB operative, but I think he's possibly been handled. I think he may have passed on some fucking, crypto accounts. Like, he's gone and attended, potentially, I don't know this, he's gone and attended, nationalist groups and, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And,
hey guys, yeah.
All the rest of it. And he's talked about people and he's spoken with someone. Someone said, well, yeah, this is the kind of thing that Russia wants. Oh yeah, okay. And maybe he's gone to Morgoth and just said, look, you need to set up a Monero account. Set up a Monero account and give it to me and I'll pass it on to these guys. There you go. Possibly. Again, this is speculation, but when you look at their activities and you look at their deceit around it, because it's not a criminal offence to be against the defence of Ukraine. This is what I mean. This is why you look so fucking guilty, the pair of you. Like, David Clues is pro-Russian. How many videos has he got? I don't agree with anything he says. I think he's a fucking lolcow himself, but I'm not going to fucking waste my time on him because he will tell you that he's pro-Russian. Well, all right, mate. Fair enough. Your arguments are shit. You'll expose yourself every time you open your mouth, really. But at least you are being honest about it. So it doesn't have the same deceit. It doesn't have the same left-hand path manipulation of these type of characters. Woes is the same. I mean, Woes is more stupid. So, I mean, he'll... Like, Morgoth... Woes would petition. Because it would, you know, it would bust his fake neutral cover. I mean, Woes a fucking idiot. But, you know... That's another story for another day. But anyway, there we go. This guy is dodgy as fuck. It's not the end of it, Endeavour, because I dare say there will be more videos on you, because I dare say there's a lot more there, and I've only just started looking. So, you know, you can cover your tracks if you like, but, I mean, I have already dug in. I have already, you know, before this is published, so, you know, before you start deleting again, well, you do what you want, mate. You do what you want.